Hey guys, so I know I promised a review of The Hunt for Red October to close out Classic Novel Month 4, and I just can't do it. Allow me to explain myself. I tried to read this book, and I thought I would like it because I like the Cold War. I like learning about stuff like that, but this book just beat me. I got 135 pages in, and I couldn't bear to force myself to keep reading the book. And this has never happened for a book for the show before, but it just, every time I opened it, I lost all motivation to read anything. Really, lost motivation to read, work on videos. It was just so dense and boring, I didn't enjoy it. And I feel bad about doing this. It's why this video is coming out this week instead of last week. I wanted to do this last week, but I felt if I could just force myself to give myself another week, I could do it, but I couldn't. This book really kicked my ass. And it's not for me. And I feel bad because I put out the poll, and this is the book that got the most amount of votes. So either this is the book everyone wanted to see, or one person really wanted to see me review this book and voted for it a lot. So I feel terrible, but at least in my belief, I think that I hate breaking promises. And I know, me saying I'm going to review a book isn't really a promise, but it was a promise to you guys and to me to sort of, be my, when I say I'm going to make a video, I want to make a video, but if I forced myself to read this book, the video would not come out good. I wouldn't be proud of it. You guys wouldn't like it. It would be a crappy episode. And I just have to do what I believe is best for me and what's best for the show. And what I think is best for the show is cutting Classic Novel Month 4 off here. The last episode will have been To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a phenomenal book and one of my favorite episodes I've done of the show ever. So I think that's a good place to end the month. And I'm sorry I couldn't finish this, and I know a lot of you are going to be like, you don't need to apologize, it's your show, but I hate saying I'm going to do something and then not doing it. I like following through on things, and I hate it when I can't do it, but this book kicked my ass, and I just can't bring myself to force myself to read this book any further. Maybe I'll come back to it one day. I hope I can, with fresh eyes, give the book the video it deserves, but right now, it's not gonna happen. I have a lot of other stuff I have planned, and this book was getting in the way, because if you look at this, this is where I am now, and this is how much of the book I have left. So there's no way I could have finished this within the next couple weeks, and I would have just been prolonging it, and I wouldn't have been making videos, and I love making videos, and I don't want to halt production on everything to finish one book. I just can't allow myself to do that. So I hope you understand, and I hope you guys will enjoy the video that you're about to see, because I worked hard on it. I've been working on it for a while, and it's a video that I think is probably going to come out good. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. I know I've been promising a top 10 worst adaptations list for the longest time, and I haven't followed through yet. That's for a few reasons, not the least of which me being unsatisfied with the script, so every time I plan to do it, I end up revising and then later scrapping it. Also, there's something I have to organize directly after it, and that's taking a while to figure out. Anyway, that's given me time to think about adaptations. And I know how bad this sounds, but some adaptations that change the source material are better for it. Please hold your angry comments until the end of the video. I know as a book reviewer I should be all for the original, but sometimes I prefer the adaptation over the original work. Sometimes an adaptation can be the superior way to experience it, so I'm gonna talk about some of them, although I am laying down one ground rule. I have to have seen both the adaptation and read the original source material, because if I haven't, I have no grounds to discuss something I haven't read or seen, so some classics may be omitted for that case. Anyway, without further ado, here are my top 10 adaptations that changed the source material, but were better for it. Number 10, About a Boy, the TV show. So, I reviewed the book a few years ago. In fact, nearly 3 years at this point. When I did, I made no secret of my contempt for the film adaptation, which changed so much and took out integral parts of the book, like all references to Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, which drove the novel's climax, which was totally bogus. Then, about a year after I made that video, NBC announced a television adaptation of About a Boy, starring David Walton and Minnie Driver. I was not very excited for it, as I believed that it would be just as bad as the original, especially because they were taking a wholly British book and transplanting it into California. But I was pleasantly surprised when I watched the first episode. It wasn't trying to adapt the book. It's using the characters, edited however slightly, and telling new stories with them. The concept is there of Will Freeman bonding with Marcus and annoying Fiona, but it isn't preoccupied with the story of the original, which I believe it's better for, as it means we're not trying to make Nirvana relevant to a show in 2014. And we're also not losing a huge part of the book, as it's not the book. It's just using the characters to tell new stories, sorta like MASH did. The show wasn't all that good and was kind of a stock sitcom, but I enjoyed it and got more out of it than I did of the direct adaptation, so I guess they did something right. Number 9, Paper Towns. I have also not made my distaste for Paper Towns a secret. The book was just pointless. There's all this stuff that's awesome, and that's only about half the book. The other half is just Q being all mopey about Margot and him annoying his friends with his mopiness. Then he goes out to find Margot and bring her back, and the book ends with Margot leaving again and Q having nothing to show for his quest. When the movie was announced, I was not very enthusiastic, since when The Fault in Our Stars movie came out, there were very minimal differences, and I figured since I didn't like the book very much, I wouldn't enjoy the movie. But they changed the book's story, and the movie is awesome. Aside from cutting out SeaWorld because of the whole moral shaky ground that SeaWorld is on, they changed the entire finale of the movie, including Angela on the road trip, and changing the road trip from being on graduation to being prior to prom, with some variation on jokes. And they work. Angela was an interesting character in the book, and her inclusion in the road trip was so good that John Green himself said that he wished he'd included her in it the first time. Plus, while we lose the scene of with Margot being confronted by everyone, we get an equally good scene in the movie of Margot and Q talking, and him denying a chance to go adventuring with her to return back to Jefferson Park. The changes were mostly good, except for cutting out the bit that explained why they call radar radar, which as a MASH fan disappointed me, but that's a nitpick and I only mention it because as a MASH fan I kinda have to. Overall, like I said in my vlog about it when the movie came out, it was a good adaptation and none of the changes are detrimental to the film, in fact making the film even better, unlike a certain adaptation I could mention. Number 8, Shrek. Okay, at this point I think everyone knows about Shrek, but most people probably don't know that Shrek was based on a children's book. And you probably didn't know because of how different the book and movie are. The book is pretty short and includes a witch character that sets Shrek off on his quest to save the princess, and all the fairy tale elements are non-existent. Plus, Fiona isn't an ogre in the books, just a really, really ugly woman. The only things from the book kept for the movie are Shrek being an ogre, him meeting a talking donkey, and him rescuing a princess. The rest of the movie was basically wholly original, with Lord Farquaad and all the fairy tale creatures invading the swamp. And I think if it had been a straight adaptation, and not added in everything it did, it wouldn't be the classic that so many kids grew up with that spawned several sequels and spin-offs. Some better than others. Shrek is an extremely funny movie, and it's way better than the book. The book is fine for a children's book, but as movies go, there's no substance without the creators of the movie taking some artistic license and spicing it up. And I think the movie benefited from it. Frankly, I don't think the movie would have been as successful if they had done it without diverting from the original plot. Number 7, Forrest Gump. Another movie you probably didn't know was based on the book. Now, I had seen the movie first, but I can respect the book. The book was a little rougher, as in the book, Forrest had a bit of a potty mouth, which of course is omitted from the film. In the book, there are also several careers for Forrest that were left out of the film, including a stint with NASA, which actually would have been pretty funny in the film, as it means we'd have gotten 2 Tom Hanks in space movies in the span of a year. Book Forrest also befriends an orangutan named Sue, and spends time with cannibals, which are also absent from the movie. And as cool as that stuff would be, I think the movie stands as it is. The changes only benefit the movie. The movie uses its time perfectly, and I think if the NASA and cannibal stuff were added, the pacing would be all off. Maybe I'm biased because it's one of my favorite movies, but I think all the changes paid off. The sequel novel, however, is great, and it does borrow elements from the movie, so if the author took a few cues from it, I think I can safely say that the changes made the story better. Number 6, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Roald Dahl repeatedly hated the movie since it was such a departure from his original vision. I actually like the movie more, and I saw it after reading the book. There's just something about the movie that I like. Maybe it's the colorful, fun visuals or the Oompa Loompa songs, but I love the movie and it's a childhood favorite of mine. Dahl disowned the movie, which was rewritten by David Seltzer, for putting more emphasis on Wonka and not on Charlie, and added in Slugworth as a villain, as he was a minor character in the original novel, and the fizzy liftings drink scene, which was not present in the book. But I'm willing to forgive it because without it, we wouldn't have this famous scene.
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
I understand the gripes against the film, but I enjoy it, and way more than the 2005 movie, which I think put too much of an emphasis on Wonka rather than Charlie, even more so than the Gene Wilder version did. The original film isn't perfect, and it's not a faithful adaptation, but the changes make for a good movie, and that's what really matters sometimes. Plus, most of the changes are expansions on limited plot details from the original, so it serves as a fitting expansion of a really good children's book. We'll be right back. And we're back. Number 5, Minority Report. The original short story, despite what I said in my review, is sorta crappy. I liked it when I first read it, but upon reflection almost 3 years later, I'm not as happy with it. The movie, however, is still awesome. The movie changes almost everything. In the movie, Anderton isn't a 50-something cop, he's a young cop working for pre-crime, which he didn't invent. And Whitwer is an agent auditing the program instead of Anderton's assistant and replacement as head of pre-crime. The story is interesting and goes into free will, but the movie has a lot more action and it's a lot cooler. There's a lot expanded on in the utopian dystopia that is the pre-crime future, and overall tells a better and more compelling story, adding in a real villain in Burgess instead of just having Anderton set up by some guy who wants to destroy pre-crime. Philip K. Dick is a good writer, but I can safely say that I enjoyed the movie more. The changes all made the story better, especially since the ending to the movie throws a twist in it and is a lot more than just a story about the nature of free will. Number 4, Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park, as I stated in my review of the book, is a terrible adaptation. And that's true. But it's a kick-ass movie. It changes the book so greatly that the result is a different but equally good story. So, obviously it's different, as Ian Malcolm survives the movie when he didn't survive the book, same with Hammond, who ironically are the only 2 of the main adult cast to appear in The Lost World. Plus, Gennaro, who is basically an irredeemable asshole in the movie, is just a guy with a family called away to check on the park in the book, which he escapes from, unlike the movie where he died in my favorite scene. I mean, Hammond's entire character was changed from a greedy asshole who was unapologetic about the death and destruction his park caused and was all ready to open up a new park on a new island, to a grandfatherly character who feels remorse at the end of the movie. Plus, the movie gave Lex something to do other than being the screaming girl, since Timmy had the dinosaur and computer knowledge in the book, and the computer stuff was given to Lex for the film, greatly improving her character. Jurassic Park is basically the pinnacle of changing whole scenes and characters and still coming out with a good movie. There's not much more I can say. The changes create a better story, one that may even surpass the original novel. Number 3, MASH. Okay, so this should be obvious. MASH, the book, is a far cry from the TV show, but the movie is also a far cry from the book. See, while the movie had a script written by Ring Lardner Jr., the cast mostly ignored it and improvised everything. So much so that while Ring Lardner Jr. won the award for Best Adapted Screenplay, most of his adapting didn't make it into the movie. The changes made, I believe, were good changes, excising a lot of the post-football game plots that just felt like padding for the most part, and taking out extraneous characters like Shaking Sammy. The movie condensed most of the book and made it into an even better story. Though I think that losing the Ho-John going to college plot was a loss, it made it even more special being used in the pilot of the TV show. The book was rough, and parts of it are easily forgettable, like the part where Hawkeye convinces a visiting colonel that he's crazy, and believes that he's caught a mermaid and wants to go to a whorehouse with an epileptic whore, which, whilst kind of humorous, just isn't as funny as the rest of the book, and I frankly forgot about it until I looked over the book again for this video. Plus, the condensing of Major Hobson and Captain Frank Burns makes sense, as both of them are bit players in the book, and combining them gives a bigger part to Frank, which is of course why he eventually ended up on the show. Plus, the funeral for the Painless Pole in the book is just weird, and instead of what they did in the movie, which was giving him a night with the incomparable Lieutenant Dish, they convinced him he was dead and went to hell or something. I've read that part over a dozen times, and I'm still not sure what happened there. Overall, the movie was good because it changed a bunch of stuff that didn't quite work in the book. Number 2, The Martian. So I went into this in my review of the book, which wasn't all that long ago, so you should go watch that video, but it bears repeating. The Martian as an adaptation is nearly flawless. For one thing, we actually see Ares 3's evacuation instead of just hearing about it from Mark later on. And it also served as a really good way to drag viewers in and not have to use stuff from the climax in the trailer, spoiling the ending. We also did lose the trip between the Hab and the Ares Foresight, meaning we don't have the late book catastrophe of Mark crashing the rover in the movie, but I didn't miss those scenes at all. While they were cool in the book, it would have dragged out the movie, and since he comes out basically unscathed anyway, it wouldn't have been dramatic in the visual medium. And the epilogue, despite being tacked on and unnecessary, is at least something I kind of wanted. I liked how the book ended right when they saved Mark, but I liked that the film added in something to let us know how their return went. It might just be me, but I was curious about what happened after I closed the book, and the movie indulged my wish. None of the changes hindered the book, and they were all changes that helped tell the story. And at no point did I miss anything that was cut, except maybe for the ASCII boobs part, because that was pretty funny. Number 1. To Kill a Mockingbird. This is my main reason for doing this list now. After reading the book and watching the movie, I was blown away by the adaptation, and how, despite changing a lot of stuff, still managed to bring out an amazing movie. The movie makes a ton of cuts, cutting out characters and subplots, but it's still got the core of the story. So, the book has all these characters, Dill's Aunt Rachel, Mrs. Henry Lafayette Dubose, who have large parts in the book, and their parts are severely limited in the film. Aunt Rachel is merged with Stephanie Crawford, the town gossip, and Mrs. Dubose appears, but her entire subplot is limited to one scene. Not to mention the character of Dollfish Raymond, who I didn't mention in my review at all, but had a large part in the book, centering around his jadedness about the hypocrisy of white society, and so he lives among the black people, and pretends to be an alcoholic so people will leave him alone, since they assume that the booze is why he does it when he actually likes it. The book has a colorful and diverse cast, and the movie isn't any worse for leaving a good chunk of them out. The condensing of the plot actually helps the movie, as it gives everything the amount of time that's necessary, and nothing feels rushed or like it went on too long. As amazing as the parts they cut out were, I'm happy that they gave more priority to the main driving plot, rather than the extraneous plot threads that didn't really go anywhere. This is basically the best adaptation I have ever had the pleasure of watching, and has actually replaced Jurassic Park for me as the pinnacle of an adaptation changing the story. And those were my top 10 adaptations that changed the source material but were better for it. Did you agree with the list? Tell me in the comments if you don't. Like I said, I only used adaptations that I had both read the source material for and seen the movie, so I had to leave out adaptations like The Shining, since I've seen the movie but I've never read the book. As a book reviewer, I always want people to read the book first, but that doesn't mean they can't like the movie better. Sometimes a filmmaker can take a story that was awesome, change it a little, and make it even awesomer. And I think that all these adaptations, while not good in the sense of being faithful, are good in the sense of being a good movie. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of the Literary Lair, you can hit that subscribe button below. And if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time. Okay, so at this point I think everyone knows about Shrek, but most people probably don't know that Shrek was based on a children's... Ooh, excuse me.